what is male? What is female? I know if you were to walk into any gender studies program at a major secular university, and Father Malachi were to be sitting in the class and you were to even say the word masculinity, I mean, you could get martyred on the spot, for even saying the word. So if you were sitting in one of those university classes and this stuff came up, and the professor put you on the spot and said, okay, well, Mr. Smarty Pants, Father Malachi, well, what is masculinity? Like, what is femininity? Like, is it really anything? Or is it just this social invention that girls wear pink and blue boys wear blue? What is masculinity? What is femininity? Is it anything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I hear that question, I think about as a kid in Georgia on 4th of July, we would have greased pig chases as kids. We try and catch a greased pig, put it into a little baby swimming pool, and whoever gets it in there wins. And it's like every time you grab it and get a hold of it, it's slipping out because it's covered in Crisco. And it seems like this question is like that for us, right? We press in to want to define more clearly and fully masculinity and femininity, and it always seems to be slipping beyond grasp. So one thing I do have to say is that I've spent a lot of time studying this. I spent a lot of time reading all kinds of things about it, having conversations, and there will always be a certain element, again, of mystery that's involved with this, that if we are unwilling to accept, then we won't be able to stand in front of this question very long. So that's one thing, to sort of put it in context. But femininity and masculinity are fundamentally, JP2 talks about this in Theology of the Body, and he's going to say, right, that it's this two ways of being made flesh, two ways of being incarnate as a human person. So femininity and masculinity directly connected to how it is that we exist as human beings in our bodies. And so you're right, the body matters because it's the context for my experience of the world. And Edith Stein was very astute. She said that we begin at very different beginning points as men and women, and by the nature of the body that we've been given. And that nature orients us in different ways. You could talk about the science behind it. You could get into like the brains, the different ways that they function. You had some funny examples last time talking about this subject of, kids who are not acting according to the gender neutral stereotype somebody's trying to generate. And why? Because it's in us. It's in our bodies. I mean, little boys are, like at the age of 5 already 10 times more likely to use a kitchen utensil as a weapon than a girl. It's just, it's in us. It's in our body. It's in the flesh. So what is it telling us? What is the body telling us? If we want to get to the essence of what it means to be a man and means to be a woman, what's masculinity and femininity, what's the body telling us? It's telling us two things. How do I stand in relationship to other people? And how am I called to make a gift of myself? Because as a human being, we always exist in relationship. There's no such thing. It is an illusion to say that I'm autonomous. I come into the world with a mother and father, even if they're not good or even if I don't know them. And I'm part of a family of some sort of relationships, even if it's not the best one. And how I stand in that series and that nexus of relationships is either as a boy or as a girl. And it's conditioned by my body, the very way that, a little baby girl is going to be able to sense the unspoken communication in the face of parents more so than the boy. And those human experiences form you and condition the way that you live your life. And so this way of being a man in the body, as a son, as a brother, as a husband, as a father, is connected to the essence of what we say when we mean masculinity. How a woman stands in relationship to others as a daughter, as a sister, as a wife, as a mother, is part of what we mean when we say feminine. And when you look at those relationships and you look at the ones that are what JP2 is going to call kind of the most essential expression of the two, which is fatherhood and motherhood, then you begin to sort of look at, well, how does this body tell me what it's going to mean to be a man? All right, well, that physical strength that I have, this capacity that is in me to be able to sense danger. This is a really cool one. So once you hit puberty as a guy, you walk into a room and immediately, without thinking, you are already subconsciously categorizing the faces of everybody in the room and making a decision: danger or no danger, friend or foe. And that reality is connected to the fact that masculinity has to do with protecting life, protecting others. Masculinity also has to do with providing. Look at this relationship, right, between a husband and a wife, between a man and a woman. This fundamental mystery of bringing new life into the world. And how do they participate in that? And it's going to reveal what we mean when we say masculinity. So a father is somebody who gives himself away and has a detachment from the gift. He's somebody who is oriented outward with his gaze of love as one who's giving a gift. He's somebody who's looking outward towards the other. And in that outward look, it's doing two things. One is he's recognizing the one whom he is giving himself to in love. And two, he's looking to make sure there's nothing or no one around that could harm them. So this role to be a protector is written into that masculine identity. And so is the role to be a provider, because again, you have a situation where, trying to survive, and a mother is trying to keep this child alive, and that mother is completely, if you've ever seen a baby in a mother's arms, like she's lost in the face of that child. And to be able to lose herself in the face of that child and give herself fully, she has to know that her needs are being met and taken care of, which is where this idea that we hear about, a provider, a protector, a leader, when we're speaking about masculinity, that's where this is coming from a real human experience, not from a social imposed construct. Now, in all the things that I'm saying, none of what I'm saying is that, masculinity means, bench pressing, 250, wearing camouflage, or, being able to burp louder than the guy across from you at the bar stool, What I'm saying about that is about the relationships that you have with others and the way that you give yourself in love. And so the body is saying, I'm outwardly oriented. You look at it and it lets you know that the way a man gives himself in love to a woman is in this initiating way. And that's not demeaning her. It's his way of giving himself. There is no other way for him to make a gift. But a woman, femininity, is connected with receiving that gift, not passively, but actively saying yes. Because for a woman to receive this gift of love, if she's not saying yes, we got a word for that. It's called rape, and it's horrible. It's active receptivity. It's the choice to say yes to the gift that this man wants to make of himself to her in his body. And she receives him in her body. And when she says yes to the call to be a mother, she does not say yes to something that is detached and outside of her. She says yes to something that's intimate and within her. And so this understanding of the relationship between women and motherhood, maternity, nurturing, John Paul II is going to say that their call is not so much to protect life and provide for it, but to receive it and give it full attention in every circumstance. And this way of living in their body conditions them. So like a woman, by the fact that she every month is aware that she is possibly going to be a mother from the time of puberty onwards to menopause, that fact conditions her experience of the world. It allows her to see that there's this call within her very body to motherhood, to gift, to nurturing new life. And one who's actually carried that life in their womb for 9 months, that woman has an awareness of the value and the precious gift that a life is. And that woman, from that point on, is not going to be able to look at another human being the same either. Again, like our body is conditioned, they're the context, the way we experience life. And so femininity is the way of experiencing life and reality in a female body. And masculinity is the way of experiencing life and reality in a male body. And those differences condition us and direct us to acting in different ways. However, and this is a very important point, back to Edith Stein, we begin in these different places, but we do have freedom. And there are differences. I love the examples you gave last time, right? Of like, you know, like you don't have to be this like, you know, sort of beating your chest dude, you know, to be a guy. You know, talking about your own love for wine. I love wine. I actually make wine. And it's, you know, something that during seminary I found to be a very productive way of procrastinating on my studies. But you know, there's not as if there's this one way of being a man or a woman. And that's why it's difficult to try and like wrap up into this tight synopsis, femininity and masculinity. But the differences are concrete and real because the body is concrete and real. And you can't change that. There is no undoing the way that we experience the world, even if some point later in life you would attempt through hormones or surgery to do so.
It's beautiful, and I think, you know, approaching it from that element of mystery is so important. I remember reading Frank Sheed's book, Theology and Sanity, where he essentially says, you know, mystery is not something that we can't know anything about. It's just simply something we can't know everything about. And so when it comes to masculine and femininity, it's not about being stuck into a mold. It's not about how we ought to be. It's about who we are as male and female. And, you know, as a father of 8, I mean, I've seen this innumerable times in my children. Like I've noticed, like when I told my little girls when they were real young, they would always turn inward toward me. Yeah. Whereas when I'd hold the boys, they always wanted to go out. Like they wanted to look, where are we going? What are we going to do? What are we going to light on fire? Like what's happening here? Like they'd always want to be getting sent out. And this language is even within the church that, in a sense, the church is a mother and she's gathering us into mass, but yet the priest as the father at the end says, now go forth. And he's preparing to send us forth into this world. And, you know, it just endlessly, the world is trying to confuse people of like, well, no, you got to fit into this mold. It's the world that wants to put us in a mold. I remember my daughter sitting with her once several years ago, and we were just talking about life in general. And she said, well, sometimes I just don't feel like that much of a girl. And I'm like, well, why? And she said, well, you know, we had an arm wrestling class, you know, contest in class. And I beat all of the boys in class, except for one because he was afraid to arm wrestle me. And so I just feel like, oh, I'm faster than the other girls. I'm stronger than the other girls. And I said, look, being weak and slow doesn't make you feminine. And I said, here, let me show you something. I pulled out my phone. I said, you know, the Olympics just happened. I want to let's look at Romanian synchronized swimmers. Now look at some Asian gymnasts. Now I want to look at a shot put thrower from Atlanta, Georgia. And now we're going to look, and we looked at all of these various, you know, female bodies and gifts. And I said, okay, now this lady who can throw a shot put 50 yards further than your dad, is she less of a woman because she doesn't look like the Romanian synchronized swimmer? Like, is weakness more feminine? Like, and we just kind of walked through and gently unpeeled these layers of like, you got to fit into this mold. You know, granted, there are substantial differences. You know, when I kids, a couple years ago, we got to be on America's Funniest Home Videos. The kids, we film all these videos, we set one in, we got picked, we got to go on the show. And when we watch these like funny video shows, you know, and there's people doing just remarkably stupid things. I always tell my kids, now I just want you to count on this little fail video, how many of these people doing stupid things are male versus female. Now let's press play. And it's like male, ding, 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 ding. Okay, well, there's one, but she's with her boyfriend, so that's half a point each. You know, like, okay, well, there's a girl. I mean, they're on their slumber parties doing handstands in their bed, knocking over the ceiling fan. But like 9 out of 10, it's just guys doing stupid stuff with their bodies, jumping off a roof with a skateboard or whatever. And this isn't culturally imposed on them. This is on a deep neurological basis, you know, of what's going on to make them take these risks. And it doesn't mean at the end of the day, like, you got to fit in this mold, because even in our call to motherhood and fatherhood, it's manifested in such incredibly diverse ways. Because you look at the worst sinners ever, they're like clones. I mean, look at all the drug cartel, you know, guys. I mean, you can't tell them apart. Look at all the, you know, terrorists for Al-Qaeda, clones. Now look at the communion of saints, the Therese of Lisieux and the de Montforts, and it's like, it's unbelievable how radiantly unique they are. And, you know, just one story before we move on exhibits this so well is Mother Teresa and her motherhood. I mean, she was often thought of as this little soft-spoken, sweet Albanian nun. Like, I mean, dude, she was a tough cookie. A friend of mine was a Swiss guard to St. John Paul II. And the Swiss guards, you know, aren't necessarily always the most spiritual bunch of guys. I mean, they're 20-something guys who want to, you know, get to dress up in their pajamas and defend the Pope. It'd be a fun job. And so sometimes if they get in trouble, breaking curfew or whatever, they'd have to do some service work. And so Mario got in a little bit of trouble again. And so he had to do service work for the Missionaries of Charity at their mother house there in Rome. And so it's a hot Italian summer day, and he's in the kitchen, and he's got to scrub all the pots and pans. And he's sitting there scrubbing this pot, and it's like days old, caked in just stuff he can't get out of this, and he is not having it. He is frustrated. He started cussing a little bit. He went to scrub it. The water flew out. It landed on his jeans and his Italian shoes. You know, he lets out a little curse word. And then someone next to him hands him, you know, a little washcloth to wipe off, you know, and he grabs it from this little person and wipes himself clean. He looks over. It's Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And she just takes one look at him and she says, "Wow, you sure are a sissy." He didn't know what to say. Like, he's a 6-foot-tall Swiss guard, and he's like, "Ugh." Yeah. And she just kind of heads out, and she gave him a little miraculous medal to hold on to, and so he took the miraculous medal, and he lost the thing. Now, like 6 months later, he sees Mother Teresa again. I forget where he was. I think it was at the Bronze Doors or whatever, and she was coming in to meet Pope John Paul II. And she walks up to him. This time he's not in his jeans and whatever. He's got the whole regalia on. And she walks up to him, and she kind of looks at him. And she pulls out of her sari another miraculous medal, not having seen him in 6 months. And she hands him the medal, and she says, "This time, don't lose it, sissy." And she walks on by. And it's like, what? Like, how did she know? How did she know I lost that thing? And 6 months ago, one conversation, but like in her maternal love, it didn't mean she was this little wallflower. Like, she would speak the truth as a good mom would. And so, you know, we've gone down a little bit rabbit hole, but like,